Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to be diving into something kind of perplexing today.
Yeah.
Affordable housing in Silicon Valley.
Interesting choice.
It's like those two
You
things
didn't.
really don't go together, do they?
Not really.
Silicon Valley, isn't that place just like,
$1 million homes.
yeah, built on million-dollar homes?
Yeah, quite.
So we're taking a look at a script for
Okay.
a real estate podcast episode
Cool.
that dives into this exact question.
I like it.
And let me tell you, it gets really interesting.
I bet.
Silicon Valley, the heart of tech innovation.
Rahab.
Venture capital billionaires.
Mhm.
And yet they're facing this housing crisis
Yeah.
that's so intense that even like
Essential workers.
essential workers
Teachers, nurses.
can't afford to live nearby.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So where does this all even begin?
Well,
Why is housing there so astronomically expensive?
yeah, so the script talks about this like
Okay.
almost comical concentration of wealth in Silicon Valley. These huge companies we all know.
Right.
Google, Apple, Meta, just
Mhm.
like printing money,
Yeah.
attracting all this top talent
Uh-huh.
with these massive six-figure salaries.
Yeah.
So that kind of buying power in a limited area,
Right.
it's bound to create some tension.
Yeah. So it's that classic
Yeah.
supply and demand issue.
Totally.
More money chasing the same number of houses
Yeah.
equals skyrocketing prices.
Exactly. But there's more.
There's got to be more to it.
Imagine this. Over 70%
What?
of residential land in Silicon Valley
Okay.
is zoned exclusively for single-family homes.
Seriously?
Yes.
70%?
70%.
So it's like
most of it.
most of it.
Yeah.
So they're basically limiting
Right.
the kind of housing that could actually help,
Exactly.
like apartments and condos.
Apartments, condos, higher
Yeah.
density housing.
Okay.
That zoning rule might have made sense,
Oh, right. Yeah.
decades ago.
Back in the day.
But now it's a major bottleneck.
Okay.
It's like trying to fit a whole orchestra into a phone booth.
That's a good analogy.
It just doesn't work.
Makes sense.
This historical zoning has essentially built a foundation of scarcity,
Yeah.
driving those prices upward artificially.
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there.
I bet there's more.
Oh, yeah.
California's building regulations
Always.
always come up
Always.
in these conversations.
Right.
What about them?
Well, the script calls them out as being notoriously complex,
Uh-huh.
stringent,
Yeah.
like every step of the way,
Oh, I bet.
from getting permits
Right.
to meeting all sorts of environmental standards, adds another layer of cost for developers.
So it's not just the land itself
No.
that's expensive.
Not just the land,
It's the whole process of building on it.
it's the whole thing.
Sounds like a developer's nightmare.
It can be,
Yeah.
especially when you factor in
What?
all the time delays.
Uh-huh.
These projects can drag on for years,
Oh, wow.
further inflating costs.
Right. And let's not forget,
No.
the land in Silicon Valley is already
Yeah.
astronomically expensive to begin with.
Astronomically.
So you've got
Planet.
expensive land,
Yep.
costly regulations,
Mm-hmm.
and then the risk of delays.
It's a lot.
It's no wonder creating affordable housing there
I know.
feels like an uphill battle.
Good time.
We keep throwing around this term affordable.
Yeah.
But let's get real for a second.
Okay.
This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet.
Right.
Real people are being impacted by this.
Absolutely. The script does a good job
Okay.
highlighting the human cost of this whole crisis.
Right.
Think about it. Essential workers,
Teachers,
nurses, firefighters.
firefighters.
The very people who keep Silicon Valley running,
Right.
they often can't afford to live anywhere near where they work.
So they're forced into these crazy long commutes
Yeah.
just to make ends meet.
Just to get by
I can't even imagine the toll
is a lot.
that takes on their lives, their families,
Uh-huh.
their free time.
It's unsustainable
Yeah,
for both the individuals and the community.
totally. And then you have
Then you got,
young professionals,
right,
folks just starting their careers,
starting out,
filled with that
Silicon Valley dream.
Silicon Valley dream.
Yeah.
But that dream
Oh,
is
he's slipping away.
getting further out of reach
Yeah.
as they get priced out of
A very place.
the very place they're trying to contribute to.
It's ironic.
Yeah, it seems like the people who are supposed to be the future of Silicon Valley
I know.
can barely afford to rent a studio apartment there.
Yeah, and that's contributing to this, like, brain drain.
Oh, yeah.
Talented individuals are forced to look elsewhere.
Makes sense.
And it also exacerbates another critical issue,
Which is,
homelessness.
oh, right.
San Jose, in the heart of it all,
Uh-huh.
has thousands of unhoused individuals.
Wow.
You see this stark contrast,
Yeah.
immense wealth
Right.
juxtaposed with visible poverty. really highlights the depth of the problem.
So we've painted a pretty bleak picture here.
We have.
But is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
There is.
Okay.
I promise.
Are there any real solutions being discussed?
Yeah, there are a few interesting approaches
Okay.
that the script outlines.
Like what?
Well, one that's gained traction is zoning reform.
It's okay.
California actually has these state laws,
Okay.
SB 9 and SB 10.
Hold on.
Yeah.
SB 9,
Right.
SB 10.
Yeah.
Those don't really tell me anything.
Okay, fair enough.
What do those laws actually do?
Well, they're recent laws
Okay.
that essentially allow for things like duplexes
Oh.
or even small apartment buildings
Huh?
on lots that were previously restricted to just one single-family home.
Interesting.
The idea is to make better use of the existing land.
That makes sense.
Right.
But I can already hear the pushback.
Yeah.
People get very attached to their neighborhood character and all that.
Oh, absolutely. It's
Uh,
controversial.
yeah.
Some people see it as the key
Right.
to unlocking more housing supply,
Okay.
while others view it as a threat to the way their neighborhoods look and feel.
Right. Right.
It's a tricky balance.
So zoning is one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
But what about the actual process of building?
Right.
We talked about how complex and costly that can be.
Yeah, it's a mess.
Is there any way to streamline that whole system?
There is
Okay, tell me more.
simplifying permitting processes,
Oh,
reducing all those unnecessary regulatory hurdles.
right.
These things could make a huge difference in incentivizing developers
Okay,
to build more housing and hopefully more affordable housing.
that makes sense. So we've got zoning reform
Mhm.
and like streamlining the building process itself.
Right.
But those feel like big,
Yeah.
government-led solutions.
Huge.
What about the private sector?
Hmm.
Those tech giants we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they doing anything to address this problem
That's a good question.
that they're kind of contributing to?
Yeah, actually, the script mentions
Okay.
this interesting trend of like public-private partnerships
Oh, interesting.
that are starting to emerge. So
So-
we're seeing like
Okay.
tech companies, developers, local governments,
Right?
all kind of coming to the table
Right.
to brainstorm more innovative solutions.
But are companies actually putting their money where their mouth is? Like,
Yeah.
what does that actually look like?
It's definitely happening.
Okay.
For instance, some companies are stepping up
Yeah.
to directly fund affordable housing projects.
Okay.
Others are going a step further
Uh-huh.
and building workforce housing specifically for their employees.
So like company-owned apartment complexes
Yeah,
that are offered
at below market rates.
below market rates to their own workers.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
It's like they're recognizing that
Okay.
their presence has this direct impact
Uh-huh.
on the housing market.
Right.
And they're trying to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
Google, for example, has committed billions of dollars
Wow.
to building affordable housing in the Bay Area,
That's awesome.
including projects near their Mountain View headquarters.
Oh, cool.
Facebook now, Meta,
Right.
has also invested in similar initiatives.
So that's definitely a positive sign.
I think so.
It seems like they're finally acknowledging their role in this crisis
Yeah.
and taking concrete steps to address it.
It's a start.
But what about solutions that don't require like
Right.
billion-dollar investments
Mm.
from these tech giants?
Sure.
The script also mentioned something about granny flats, right?
Yes.
What was that all about?
Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs,
Okay.
are becoming increasingly popular.
Okay.
It's that idea of adding a separate living space
Ah.
to an existing property, like a converted garage or a backyard cottage.
Right, like having a mini apartment on your property.
yeah.
So you're adding density
Uh-huh.
without necessarily building
Right.
these massive new apartment complexes. That can sometimes face
Community pushback.
community pushback.
Totally.
Exactly. It's a more
Incremental distributed approach
distributed approach.
to increasing housing options.
I like it.
Plus, it can be a win-win.
Well, how so?
Homeowners get extra rental income,
Okay.
and it provides more affordable housing units
Makes sense.
that might not have existed otherwise.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's a solution that can benefit both sides.
Totally.
But what about the people who are really struggling right now?
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Those who are facing eviction
Right.
or can barely afford their rent increase.
That's where policies like rent control
Okay.
and tenant protections come in.
Okay.
These measures can provide some immediate relief to renters
Oh.
who are being squeezed by rising costs.
But didn't we talk about how limiting supply
Yeah.
can actually worsen the problem in the long run?
It's true.
Wouldn't rent control discourage developers
Yeah,
from building new units, especially affordable ones?
that's a valid point.
Yeah.
It's a complex issue with both pros and cons.
Right.
Rent control can offer essential breathing room
Oh.
for those struggling,
Okay.
but it's not a magic bullet.
Right.
It's often seen as a temporary measure
Okay.
to mitigate the immediate pain,
I see.
while policymakers and developers work on those longer-term solutions
Yeah.
that address the root cause,
Okay.
lack of supply.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Exactly.
It helps in the short term, but you still need to set the bone for a full recovery.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance
Right.
between providing immediate relief
Yeah.
and fostering a healthy housing market
Makes sense.
that can sustain itself over time.
Speaking of fostering a healthy housing market,
Yeah.
are there any other incentives
Yeah.
that could encourage developers to build more affordable units?
There are.
Like what?
One that the script highlights is offering tax breaks
Okay.
or other financial incentives to developers who include a certain percentage
Okay.
of affordable units in their new projects.
So it's kind of like a reward
Exactly.
for doing the right thing.
Yeah,
That sounds like a pretty direct way
I think so.
to incentivize the kind of housing
Right.
that we desperately need.
Totally.
So let's recap for a second.
Okay.
We've got zoning reform,
Yes.
streamline the building process,
Uh-huh.
public-private partnerships,
You got it.
ADUs,
Yep.
rent control,
Mm-hmm.
and tax incentives for affordable housing development.
Wow, you've got a great memory.
Thanks.
That's a pretty comprehensive list of potential solutions.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
And I'm sure our listeners are forming their own opinions about which of these approaches
Yeah.
seem most promising.
For sure. And that's what's so exciting
Ah.
about these deep dives. It's
Yeah.
not just about presenting the facts. It's about sparking those aha moments.
Okay.
For listeners, prompting them to think critically, right?
About complex issues.
Yeah.
And maybe even inspiring them to take action.
So what does all of this mean for
Yeah.
someone like me? Someone who's listening
Uh-huh.
and maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed
Yeah,
by the complexity of this issue?
for sure.
What's the key takeaway here?
The most important thing to remember
Okay.
is that affordable housing in Silicon Valley
Uh-huh.
is not just a problem for policymakers
Okay.
or developers to solve.
Right.
It's an issue that impacts all of us
Right.
and therefore requires a collective effort to address.
Feels like we've been through like a whirlwind
It has been a lot.
of information.
Yeah.
We explored the root of this housing crisis,
We did.
looked at the real people caught in the middle of it,
Uh-huh.
and even brainstormed some potential solutions.
That's right.
It's definitely a
Multifaceted.
multifaceted challenge.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
But I think what's encouraging is that there seems to be like
Yeah.
a growing awareness of the problem.
And a willingness,
Like in some corners,
at least in some corners, to actually try something new.
try something new.
So if we zoom out a little,
Okay.
where do we even go from here?
That's a good question.
What's the next step in this journey towards a more affordable Silicon Valley?
For me, it's about moving beyond just talking about the problem
Okay.
and taking concrete action.
Yeah.
It's great to have all these ideas,
Right.
but they need to be put into practice.
That makes sense, but what does that action
Yeah.
look like? What can people actually do?
It can take many forms.
Okay.
It could be supporting policies that promote affordable housing development,
Uh-huh.
holding elected officials accountable for their promises,
Oh.
or even considering changes in our own lives.
Changes in our own lives.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's say you're a homeowner.
Okay.
Maybe you could explore building an ADU
Uh-huh.
on your property and renting it out at an affordable rate.
Right.
Or if you're a renter. Okay.
Perhaps you could consider becoming more involved
Uh-huh.
in local advocacy groups pushing for housing reform.
So it's about getting involved at a personal level,
Yeah.
not just expecting someone else to fix it.
Right.
And maybe being more open-minded about
Yeah.
what our neighborhoods could look like.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that creating
Okay.
a more equitable and inclusive society requires all of us to participate,
Yeah.
to be part of the solution in whatever way we can.
I'm also thinking about those NIMBY attitudes we talked about.
Right.
Maybe part of the solution is having more open and honest conversations
I agree.
with our neighbors,
Yeah.
trying to bridge that understanding gap.
I love that idea. That
Right.
shifting the narrative
Yeah.
from us versus them
Right.
to we're all in this together.
Makes sense.
Because ultimately, a community's true value lies in its diversity, its
Aw.
affordability,
Right.
and its ability to provide opportunities for everyone,
Yeah.
not just a select few.
That's a really powerful thought. Thanks.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into affordable housing in Silicon Valley,
Yeah.
let's go back to that initial question
Okay.
we posed. Is it a myth or a possibility?
Based on everything we've explored today,
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards possibility.
Okay,
It's a complex challenge with no easy answers,
for sure.
but it's not an unsolvable one.
No.
The key is having the collective will to actually implement
Right.
those solutions we talked about.
And that's where our listeners come in.
Yes,
Because change really does happen from the ground up.
it does.
It starts with the individual actions, those conversations with friends and family,
Yeah,
and that willingness to step outside our comfort zones
right.
and challenge the status quo.
So as you go about your day,
Yeah.
ask yourself this.
Okay.
What's one small action I can take,
Uh-huh.
however small it may seem,
Okay.
to contribute to a more affordable and inclusive Silicon Valley?
I like that.
Maybe it's attending a city council meeting, donating to a local housing organization,
Huh.
or even just having a conversation with a neighbor about these issues.
Because those seemingly small actions
Yeah,
can create a ripple effect.
they really can.
And who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe one day affordable housing in Silicon Valley
Right.
won't sound like such a riddle after all.
I truly believe that.
I like that a lot.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time,
Okay.
ready to explore another fascinating topic.
And until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better future.
Yes.
One deep dive at a time.